Welcome, everybody, to the fifth session of the ICSA 2024 virtual conference. Today, in this room, on this link, we have David Leach, who is presenting his work on kibbutz and community. David, I have known for a few years. I remember you from previous conferences. And as a result of meeting you the first time, I read this book and was incredibly inspired by it. And I would encourage you, other participants, as soon as this session is over, that you run to your nearest Zoom bookshop and get a copy. It's a great read. And I'm really looking forward to the session because we are going to do an interactive game based on the book. And of course, David will say more about that in a minute. I would ask everyone to, if they can, to put their proper name up so that when we check things out, we can see who you are. And I would like to see everybody who's here because that's one of the things we like to do on these things. So I'm going to hand it over to you, David, and let you start the session.
Well,
It's all yours.
thank you so much for such a wonderful introduction, and it means so much to me to hear that about my book. I'm going to just share my screen. Right. All right. Can everybody see that okay?
Yes, we see.
Great, thank you. Just a few acknowledgments. One, a kind of territorial acknowledgement. I'm kind of coming from you here early in the morning on the traditional territories of the Lekwungen-speaking people, the Songhees and Esquimalt peoples of the Coast Salish, and that's just something that we do to acknowledge and respect the Indigenous peoples of our lands here in Canada. I think it's particularly important when we're kind of existing in this virtual world to kind of really think about where we are rooted to. A huge kind of thank you to all of the ICSA organizers, and especially Jan and Anton to help kind of run this. It's amazing to connect again. I haven't been able to kind of travel to the conference for a variety of reasons, COVID, of course, and being chair of my department for a while, and all sorts of other things. And it's amazing to see how, again, through the challenges of Zoom, you've really kind of recreated that sense of community. So thank you so much. A quick thank you to my research assistants, for which my book wouldn't have been possible. Thanks to Jerry Flexer, who did a bit of everything, and Ashley Blackier, who's the video game designer who worked with me on the project that I'll talk about as well. I'm sitting out here on the west coast of Canada. We're in the midst of an ice storm after the coldest day in recorded history, after the warmest summer in recorded history, after multiple kind of fire seasons. We really feel like we're on the edge of the climate crisis. And yet I find inspiration from the eco communities, the intentional communities I've visited, and I've learned from the eco villages, people like Jan working permaculture, who are trying to kind of teach us how to kind of live in better harmony with our planet. And finally, my heart and my thoughts continue to go out to the kibbutzim in Israel, especially the kibbutzim in the Otafaza region, who are so devastated by the Hamas attacks of October 7th. I've visited there as part of my research. I know many people there, artists, activists, social workers who are really kind of engaged with peace, and also kind of thinking about the kibbutzim in the north where I lived, and I know many have been evacuated as well. That's something we're not hearing about here in North America as well. So quickly, what we're going to do today, the first part is going to be a bit of a sprint. So if you've got any questions, kind of raise them or stop me, or there should be plenty of time to unpack stuff. But it's just a background on the whole concept of serious games and social simulations. A quick look at the project design from kind of book to video game, as I've called it. And then the real focus is on doing something a bit more interactive. We'll go online and do a kind of group playthrough of the project that I've developed. And you will participate via chat votes as well. So be prepared to kind of make a decision and vote. And then we'll unpack it. And again, that should take 20 to 25 minutes. It could be a lot shorter if we make bad decisions and our community doesn't thrive. So I'll give you that warning and then leave a lot of time because I want this to be very kind of discussion oriented. Any questions you might have, but also think about how interactive media or stories can educate about community and how maybe playing around with simulations can enable community building. So as Jan mentioned, kind of my book was inspired by my time living on Kibbutz Shamir in northern Israel. It kind of just stayed with me for years and years. I eventually went back and did multiple research trips through the north, south, everywhere, visiting many different kibbutzim communities, reading thousands of kind of films and books and articles, visiting Israel for the ICSA conference, and then giving a presentation in 2013, and finally publishing the book in 2016. But one of the challenges I had so much material that I had to leave out about the history, about the kibbutz, about the particular kind of decisions and challenges of individual communities. I had great material just hanging out and talking with Anton that unfortunately got left on the cutting room floor. And I really wanted to kind of think about how I could share more of this with a new audience. And in the time since I was kind of writing and researching the book, I was working more and more in interactive media. Video games and interactive media are the biggest cultural industry on the planet. I was witnessing how my young students experience the world through video games and interactive media. And if I wanted to reach them, I thought I should kind of do something and use this material that way. So a few key concepts are interactivity, the just core concept that we interact with a web page or a game in ways that our feedback affects the experience. And that gives us a sense of agency. We have kind of control over the experience. We're not just kind of reading a book and absorbing the information. That's based around choice. There's a series of kind of decisions that you might have to make. And that also creates a sense of immersion. You're immersed in this world, you feel part of it. Otherwise, those choices don't feel meaningful. And what's important about that, I think, both for education and other things, is that it's a safe place for failure, that you can learn from failure. You make decisions, they don't work out, then you can just kind of go back and try it again. And that relates to a sense of play. And psychologist Peter Gray has been talking a lot about the importance for play, for learning, but also for kind of community as well, and how we've often kind of reduced or eliminated play from the lives of our kids and even ourselves. I'm just kind of moving ahead here. Ian Bogost is one of the leading theorists and also kind of creators of things called persuasive games, serious games, or games for change. And he kind of points out that games and simulations are systems of interlocking parts and behaviors. But the world, and I would argue also communities, are also made of these different interlocking parts and then behaviors, their systems as well. And this parallel structure gives games a unique way of representing how things work in the world. There are simplified versions of the complex systems of the world. And because they are representational, they can also depict how things should work. They can give even a utopian view of the world. And they can make arguments about which behaviors are desirable or undesirable. And they let us test those systems in very interesting ways. And we've always had, or we've long had kind of different kinds of simulation games, whether they're economic simulation games. Famously in the early 20th century, there was developed the Landlord's Game, which was a board game that was a critique of capitalism. It got kind of stolen and reworked and famously became Monopoly, which of course is an incredible celebration of capitalism. In the late 70s, during the small farming crisis in the US, where a lot of farms were going bankrupt, a farmer developed the farming game, which allows people to kind of think through the particular challenges of operating a small farm successfully. In 1995, The Settlers of Catan came out, and this opened up a huge new kind of realm of what became known as Euro games, more complex board games around resource management and kind of thinking through different systems. I was fortunate to visit Findhorn during one of the ICSA conferences and got to experience just even briefly the transformation game, which is this amazing experience that was kind of developed and is used on Findhorn. It's more of a social stimulation game than a simulation game to get people thinking about their personal development, community development, social development. They do it in small groups, but they also do it as a planetary version to help their community kind of work through the next few years of challenges and decisions. And I know of no other community, intentional or otherwise, that integrates a game into the fabric of their lives as much as Findhorn. I'd love to learn more about it as well if anybody knows. And of course, now there's video games and digital video games, which include utopias, simulations. Most of them tend to kind of focus on dystopias, worlds gone wrong, because that's a bit more dramatic and exciting to play around. But there's also a long history of using video games to explore and play around with the utopian impulse. This is a very early version of trying to build your own utopia. Most famously are the SimCity and Sims games, in which you have to kind of design and manage and build a working city environment, an urban environment. One of the most popular experiences, it's more than a game, has been Minecraft, in which millions of kids learn how to kind of work either alone or together to kind of build these elaborate online worlds. And then there's more kind of economic political simulations. Democracy is a fascinating and complex game. I think it's in its fourth version, in which you have to operate a government and make difficult policy decisions and weigh the kind of influences of various kind of demographics in your country as you work towards election. And you kind of realize the challenges of both kind of consensus and compromise. And then there's Peacemaker, which was made by an Israeli kind of game maker. And this is just an absolutely kind of fascinating and compelling political simulation game, in which you have to play as the Israeli prime minister or the president of the Palestinian Authority. And again, face all of these kind of challenges and difficult decisions as you work towards a two-state solution. Well, that led me to think about how can I actually kind of create a game out of the material that I had gathered to kind of think about the kibbutz. And I'll just kind of walk you through a few goals of the project. You can decide whether I can reach them or not. The first was just to kind of educate. I mean, a lot of people outside of this conference don't really know the 100-year history of the kibbutz. And this is very much a pre-October 7th history, as kibbutz members have said. Everything kind of changed on that day, and this game does not reflect that in any way. To engage, so to draw people in and have people make the difficult social, economic, and political decisions that kibbutzniks often had to make over that 100-year history. And I think the game works best when you kind of play with other people and kind of debate those decisions. The audience is not necessarily for people like you who are experts on community, but it's aimed at a bit more at a general population, younger audiences and players as well. So it's a little bit simplified in that way. The medium, I wanted it to be very accessible. I mean, too often kind of video games aren't accessible to a general audience. So this is a web-based game that anybody can kind of log on to and play. It only takes 20 to 30 minutes. The basic game mechanic is a series of choices that impact four measures of community health. So you're worried about your community's population, its economy, its reputation, and its solidarity as well. And you're working to try and optimize them. Your point of view is as a kibbutz founder, as a kibbutz pioneer in the early 20th century, and then the subsequent generations. So it's trying to bring you into that sensibility of what it might have been like to be an early kibbutznik, and then part of the later generations. And one kind of just warning. This is very much a beta version, an early version. It's got a few bugs, a few typos, likely a few historical anomalies. Please let me know. We hope to kind of develop it more in the future. Just send me an email or drop something in a chat. Now, before we begin, I'm just going to show you the actual development. So it began as just a paper prototype. This is the earliest idea as I was kind of mapping out what it might look like. Then I kind of drafted a series of different eras as well as different characters who embodied the different ideas of the kibbutz members. And then I had to write it all in an Excel spreadsheet, which is an absolute nightmare to do, but it allows you to kind of map out the different choices and then how it affects the different variables. So any choice will have a different effect on your population or your economy or one of the other variables that you don't necessarily know. And finally, my research assistant kind of programmed it in JavaScript, which is the basic language of the web. And this is what it looks like, or this is what it will look like if you succeed and make it through 100 years of kibbutz history. And of course, there's ways of kind of failing and having your kind of kibbutz collapse before that. So finally, we're gonna do a playthrough here in a moment. And what I'm going to ask you to do is kind of click on the chat function and choose either 1, 2, 3, 4 based on the list of option. Again, majority rules. So I'm going to have Anton kind of decide which gets the most votes and cast any tiebreakers as well. What we will need to do is first choose a kibbutz philosophy is the first question, a location for the community, and then we'll work through 10 historical eras. And in each era, we'll be faced with two dilemmas. And these are randomized. One is an internal, a social community dilemma, and one is external, economic, political, something that's affecting the community from the outside. So 20 questions in total. And again, these are the variables. You want to make sure your population doesn't obviously fall below 1, that your economy doesn't fall too far, that your reputation doesn't fall too far. And the tricky one is solidarity. Again, if it falls below 1, your community dissolves. But if it also falls below 50, you risk the chance that people are going to vote against you. All right, I'm going to stop sharing this. Let's see if this works. And I'm going to start sharing this. All right, everybody see that okay? And I'll be the narrator, so I'll kind of read the text aloud, but feel free to kind of follow along, and then we'll quickly get into a series of questions, which again, have your chat function up, and we'll do it pretty quickly. Oh, interesting. Dam and her also use games. And I'll ask Anton to just let me know which choice there. I'll make that a little bit bigger. All right, are we all ready? So imagine yourself as a kibbutz pioneer. 2 weeks ago, you said goodbye to your family in Russia. Now, after a land and sea voyage, you disembark in the port city of Haifa. The dry, hilly landscape looks alien to your eyes. You arrive with a loaf of bread, a small amount of money, and a dog-eared copy of Old New Land, Theodor Herzl's utopian vision of a new state for the Jewish people. The custom agent asks for your visa. You wander the streets of Haifa. Arab shopkeepers sell their wares. Mount Carmel rises above the Mediterranean coast and the bustle of the port. In cafes and hostels, you debate with other Jewish immigrants how best to settle this land. The next day, you visit the Palestine office. Welcome. We need young pioneers like you to build a community, says the administrator. I have a few questions before I assign you to a settlement group. First, what youth group do you belong to? So this is your first choice. Number 1 is Marxist. Number 2 is Socialist. Number 3 is Labor Zionist. Number 4 is Religious. So jump in there and make a choice. And again, we'll move fairly quickly, so 5. Any other thoughts? All right. Looks like Socialist is taking the lead, so we'll go with that. And so now, once we choose Socialist, you're going to have to probably choose decisions that most align with your values with future choices. Indeed, he replies, we must live from each according to his ability to each according to his needs. The administrator searches your answers or scratches your answers on a file. Taming this land isn't for the weak of heart or body, he warns as he unfolds a map. Where in Palestine do you want to begin? Number 1 in the north, number 2 in the east, and number 3 in the south. So where do you want to found your kibbutz? Well,
2 south, 3 north.
what's that? Oh, it looks like the north.
I think the north
Ooh.
is winning.
The north is winning. All right, we'll go with north. That's the area I know best, anyways. True adventurer, he says. We will send you to the mountains past Lake Kinneret. All right, so here we enter the first era as well, and I should kind of maybe scroll down in here. The founding of the kibbutz. You meet your new comrades at a training farm outside of Haifa. Together, you'll work as a collective and vote on the decisions of the General Assembly. You travel for days and arrive at a plot of land purchased by the Jewish National Fund. You set up tents and break ground. When night falls, you join hands and dance the hora under the flickering stars. As settlers of Palestine, you will build a village and live as absolute equals. You'll found a nation. You will heal the world. A few months later, your kibbutz faces its first dilemma. All right, and again, these are all kind of based on either real or generalized historical incidents. I relied heavily on Henry Near's history of the kibbutz movement, but other sources. A volunteer from Europe takes a cigarette break at the end of every furrow he plows. He's a poor pioneer, complains Moshe. Send him home. He's fine, says Yosef, from each according to his ability, and that's his ability. What do you say, or what do you do about the lazy volunteer? Number 1, ask him to leave. Number 2, let him stay.
The truth is, it's a half a cigarette at the end of each furrow, not even a full one.
What are we getting here? What's our vote?
People are saying they should let him stay. Let him
Oh, yeah,
stay,
sure.
let him stay.
Let him stay it is. Great. The new worker stays. Members still complain about doing more work to make up for his slow pace. So your population's gone up, your economy's gone up, but your solidarity's dropped a little bit. Some people aren't happy with that. All right. Oh, here we go. You can tell who this is based on. Golda, a young immigrant from America, wears pressed clothes and tells the General Assembly to buy new drinking glasses for the dining room. Enough of her airs, complains Moshe. She isn't ready to be a pioneer. What do you do about Golda? Ask her to leave. Tell her that a good kibbutznik is never materialistic and she should share her dresses, ignore the gossips, and buy new glassware.
Yeah, tell her to share. That's what people are saying. Tell her to share. Number 2.
Tell her to share. Uh-oh. And this is an interesting part of the a game that some people don't like. Because your solidarity has already fallen, the kibbutz has voted against you. So they decided to buy new glassware. We'll talk about this in a while. All right, we enter the British Mandate. What began as a small commune or kibbutz has become a larger community or kibbutz in the Great War. Britain drives the Ottomans out of Palestine. The Balfour Declaration promises a homeland for the Jews. Every day brings you closer to fulfilling Herzl's dream. And yet frontier life remains a struggle. Drought, malaria, long days in the field. Confidence wavers in your comrades. How can you create utopia? Who will feed the waves of new immigrants? And now you hear reports that your Arab neighbors do not welcome new Jewish settlements. There are new worries every day. The Great Depression hits Palestine too. Many immigrants return to Europe. Several members see no future on the kibbutz and threaten to leave if conditions don't improve. Let us take jobs or on a private farm, argues Yosef. We can't stick to farming. What do you advise? Number one, members can work in town if they give their money to the kibbutz, or two, everyone must follow the job rotation and only work for the kibbutz.
We've got one of each. 2 1-1, 3 1-1, 4 1-1. Yeah, one.
Looks like number one. All right,
Yeah.
let's see if the kibbutz agrees as a whole. Oh, yeah. Members who work outside the kibbutz bring new wealth to your community. Other kibbutzniks accuse them of not turning over all their wages, though. Still, the freedom to work outside the kibbutz draws new members. So your solidarity is falling, but your population and your economy is going up. So that's something to think about. Your population has grown so that the General Assembly can no longer sit around a table in the dining room. Meetings go on for hours. I'm sure you've all experienced that. Small is beautiful, says Moshe. We should split and start a new kibbutz. Others disagree. Only by growing can we settle Palestine, says Sarah, and change the world. What do you recommend? 1, split the community into 2. 2, attract more members and expand rapidly. 3, maintain your current size. So the idea of what is the right size for a community.
Two, 1, 3, 3, 1, 2.
This is a very divided vote.
Yeah, we've got everything, but I think 2 just wins it.
2 just wins it. Let's see. And again, oh, the kibbutz voted against you as well. They decided to split in 2, which actually improved your solidarity, but your populations radically declined. The coming of war. Darkness spreads over Europe. The Nazis rise to power in a spectacle of brown shirts and broken glass. War is on the horizon. You urge family members there to leave before it's too late. For many, it will be. Palestine suffers under the global depression. Tensions rise between Arab populations and Jewish colonists. The British government releases a white paper and reneges on its promise of a Jewish homeland, and your small community struggles to survive. Oh, this is an interesting one. The night watchman hears a strange whistling and discovers that Haviva owns a personal tea kettle in violation of your philosophy of no private property. What does it matter? She replies. If everyone has a kettle, says Hannah, nobody will go to the common room and we will live as isolated as city folk. What should you do about the problem of the tea kettle? 1, Haviva can keep her kettle. 2, confiscate the kettle and add it to the common room. 3, buy every member a personal kettle. And this was a famous debate in the early kibbutz.
1, 2, 3. 1. 3 1s.
Looks like she can keep the kettle.
Yeah, she can keep the kettle.
We'll see if the kibbutz let her keep the kettle. After a few weeks of being ostracized by the kibbutz, Haviva and her husband pack up the kettle and leave. Nobody brings private property into the kibbutz again for years. Well, that's improved your solidarity and your reputation. A trio of Jewish fighters arrive at the kibbutz in the middle of the night and ask to be hidden from the authorities. The next morning, British soldiers arrive. We're looking for terrorists from the Irgun, an officer demands. They sabotaged a convoy and killed one of our men. What do you tell them? One, you see no evidence of the resistance fighters. You are a neutral kibbutz. Two, you are neutral kibbutz, but they can search your grounds. Three, you reveal the hiding location of the fighters. And this is kind of the pre-war. Allow the search.
Two wins.
Two wins. Again, they voted against you. They say they've seen no evidence, though that has pushed your solidarity back up. So hopefully they'll vote for you now. Birth of a Nation. The war ends with the defeat of Nazi Germany. You slowly learn the true horrors of the Holocaust. The European youth movements that supplied the kibbutzim with volunteers have been exterminated among the 6 million lost in the Shoah. Can anybody deny the need for a nation for the decimated Jewish people? You hear rumors that the United Nations wants to turn part of Palestine into a Jewish state. You hope your kibbutz one day marks the borders of the nation, and so you prepare to defend it. During the 1948 war, Arab villagers flee past your kibbutz. Their children are crying in the wagons outside your gates. They will be safer in Lebanon and Jordan, says Moshe. What do you tell the villagers? One, they should flee to safety in an Arab nation. Two, you offer food and money and promise to watch over their village until they return. Three, let them stay in your kibbutz until the fighting is over.
Three.
Great. Some of the villagers take up your offer of sanctuary. The army arrives and marches the villagers to a larger Arab town. They are never allowed to return to their original village, but they become citizens in the new state of Israel and pay back your generosity by working for hire when you need extra hands. Here's a key one that you always get. An ideological schism splits the kibbutz movement. Some members believe in the Soviet philosophy of state socialism. Others want to distance the kibbutz from the USSR. Arguments erupt in the General Assembly. Members stop talking to each other. If we can't agree, says Miriam, one of your founders, we must split the kibbutz in two. What do you suggest? One, try to resolve the differences between the groups. Two, try to split amicably and cooperate. Three, make a hard split and go your separate ways.
One. Two.
One. Looks like one.
Yeah, one wins.
Unfortunately, the kibbutz voted against you. The kibbutz chose try to split amicably and cooperate. So your reputation is going up, but your population is going down. 1956 to 65, coming of age. The kibbutz movement is renowned for its role in the creation and defense of the state of Israel. Your communities feed a rapidly expanding population from the fields and orchards. In a single generation, you have fulfilled Theodore Herzl's dream, but you also imagined so much more: equality, fraternity, solidarity. Israel grows into a modern nation with cities and development towns, religious enclaves, and Arab quarters. A generation of kibbutz-born children become the new leaders who must define the community's future. What role should the kibbutz play in this complex society? The new Jewish state welcomes hundreds of thousands of new immigrants every year. Many are poor Mizrahi Jews cast out from Arab countries in the wake of Israel's independence. Prime Minister Ben-Gurion demands that kibbutzniks do their part and absorb these immigrants as members. We need to only take members who understand our philosophy, cautioned Shmuel. What do you recommend? One, accept a dozen new families from the Arab states. Two, you can't absorb new members, but you will hire the immigrants as laborers and factory workers. Three, you only accept members from your own socialist youth movement. All right, one
Wins.
Again, let's see if the kibbutz agrees with you or not. Yeah, it's difficult at first to integrate the new arrivals who are more religious and less educated, but they are hard workers who welcome new home and a new homeland after fleeing the Arab states. The Israeli government rewards you for helping with the mass influx of new citizens, unlike many of your fellow kibbutzniks who shut their doors. So again, your population and your economy's gone up, or your reputation has gone up significantly. Only work gives meaning to life. Your founders have grown too old for field work, but still want to contribute rather than retire. We could add a factory where shifts would be easier on their bodies than farming, suggests Ziva. What do you do about your elderly members? And now you have this kind of shift in generations. One, they must still work, but fewer hours. Two, expand the seniors' home for the new retirees. Three, build a small factory where they can work. Four, let them retire in a seniors' home in town.
Three
All
win.
right. All right, we built, and this is actually based on my experience at Kibbutz Shamir, where they actually built their famous lens policing factory for seniors. Your founders are happy to contribute to the kibbutz economy, even if they can't work in the fields. Retirement is for capitalists, they say with a sly smile. So your economy is great, your reputation is strong, and that helped your solidarity as well. 65 to 75, the Six-Day War and its aftermath. Your nation teeters on the brink of another war with the surrounding Arab nations. Your members are called to arms, and then in a flash, Israel emerges victorious. Many of the heroes of the Six-Day War grew up as kibbutzniks, many casualties too. But you face new questions. How do you adjust to the changing society around you? How do you make peace with the Arab nations you defeated? And what about a new generation of pioneers who want to settle the captured territories? An American psychologist wants to stay on your kibbutz and study the effects of communal child rearing on the community's social dynamics. He promises not to name your kibbutz when he publishes the results. We have nothing to hide, says Tanya the nanny. The world should know about our way of life. Other members worry about the intrusion. Do you allow the scholar to live on your kibbutz to do for his research? One, no, your privacy is more important. Two, as long as your identity, yes, as long as your identity is anonymous. Or three, your community is a true utopia and the world should know this. Looks like it's three. Not surprising for a group in the ICSA.
It's both 2 and 3, actually.
Oh, both 2 and 3. Oh, I went with 3. The
Yeah,
academic
three,
study
three,
becomes
three plus
the
one.
academic study becomes a bestseller. Who knew? People around the world learn about the Israeli communal movement through life on your one small village. Membership goes up along with your reputation. Parents in your kibbutz want their children to sleep in their apartments rather than in the communal children's house with a nanny. We can use the children's houses for daycares or workshops, says Amos. Older members worry this will end the kibbutz's unique way of educating children. It will be the end of the communal spirit, warns Moshe. The General Assembly has never been this divided. What do you recommend? One, let children sleep in their parents' apartments. Two, retain the children's houses for communal child rearing. And obviously, this was a major decision in the kibbutz movement.
Got 4 1s and 1 2, 2 2s, 5 1s and 2 2s.
All right, looks like we're going with 1. The move makes most members happy. They always wanted more time with their children. Other kibbutzes wonder if you are even really a kibbutz anymore. The kids, they keep being kids. Political and economic crisis. For nearly 30 years, Israel has been led by left-wing governments backed by your members. That ends in 1977. Begin and the Likud party rise to power. They attract religious voters and new immigrants disenchanted with the establishment in Israel, including the kibbutz. Then a financial crisis sweeps Israel. Spiraling hyperinflation and interest rates throw markets into turmoil. Debts balloon. Members worry the kibbutz can no longer provide a safety net. Oh, interesting. Your kibbutz accepts its first group of young German volunteers. The new arrivals cause anxiety in several kibbutzniks who are Holocaust survivors. The sound of German brings tears to my eyes, says Menachem, who lost his family in Auschwitz. These volunteers remind me of the camp guards who marched my parents to the ovens. How do you resolve their concerns? One, insist that the German volunteers leave. Two, allow the volunteers to stay. Three, arrange meetings with survivors to tell their stories to the volunteers.
3.
3. Right. Not everyone is happy with this compromise to let the Germans volunteers stay, but conversations evolve into a program of reconciliation between young Germans and older Jews on your kibbutz. The kibbutz asked Yuval, a creative young kibbutznik, to attend university in Haifa so he can become a teacher in the regional high school. I prefer to study art in Paris for a year, he replies, and asks the kibbutz to pay his tuition. What do you tell him? One, fund his art school tuition as long as he returns to the kibbutz. Two, he can study art part-time in Haifa while he gets his teacher's training. And this is based on my interview with the playwright Joshua Sobel. See you, Pearl.
You need to vote 1 or 2.
1 or 2. What is it?
2.
Looks like 2.
Part-time 2. 1. 1. 2. It's
This
the
is a tough one.
same. It's the same.
Then you've got to cast a deciding vote, Anton.
Let's go for 1. Let's go for 1.
Oh, they did. They voted against you anyways.
No.
He can study part-time in Haifa where he gets his teacher training, which is actually what happened anyways. The financial crisis persists. We're in the last 2 eras. Politics in Israel becomes a stalemate. A fatal truck accident in a refugee camp sparks the Palestinian people on the West Bank and Gaza to protest the army's occupation. General strikes, civil disobedience, and boycotts of Israeli institutions lead to clashes with stones and Molotov cocktails. The IDF tries to suppress the protests with little success, but many casualties. Within the borders of Israel, your kibbutz is struggling to stay afloat and remain meaningful. Kibbutz-born children didn't come back as members after their army service. Instead, they traveled the world or moved to Tel Aviv. Life is elsewhere. Who wants to be a farmer anymore? Asked Rebecca, a third-generation daughter of the kibbutz. How can your aging kibbutz rejuvenate its membership? 1, offer returning children the newest apartments and build a kibbutz disco. 2, do nothing. Your children return when they tire of city life. 3, recruit from the youth movement and from diaspora Jews with a passion for Zionism. How do you rejuvenate your
3, 3, 1 and 2. 2 3s, 2 1s and a 2.
all right, we need a deciding vote here.
Surely the disco is the answer.
All right, the disco. We'll go with the disco. Your investment in new facilities encourages a wave of returns from children in the kibbutz. The community feels lively again. Good call. The economic crisis forces your financial committee to consider more drastic actions and cutbacks. We must be ruthless, says Reuben, your young economic director, or the kibbutz will fail. Where do you begin to reduce the budget? This is a really tough one. I think you always get this choice. 1, education and childcare, cut from there. 2, free meals in the dining hall and extra programs in the social center. 3, cut from healthcare in the senior center. 4, no new investments in farm equipment or the factory.
Four, 2, 4, 2, 3, 2, 2. 2 wins.
Members aren't happy about losing free meals, but it helps to reduce the economic bleeding. All right, Startup Nation. The Oslo Peace Accords bring a hope for peace, but then comes more sadness. After a speech in Tel Aviv, Prime Minister Rabin is shot and killed. Unrest grows in the territory. Security becomes more important than peace for the new right-wing government. Your communities feel like islands of socialism amid a stormy sea of capitalist competition. Amos, your business manager, suggests a couple of options for your kibbutz to industrialize and become a player in Startup Nation. Number 1, stick to farming. Number 2, a factory to produce drip irrigation systems. Number 3, a factory to produce armor for military vehicles. Number 4, a factory to design progressive lenses. Looks like number 2. Number 2.
Number 2.
Your innovative system makes the deserts bloom and is sold around the world. New members arrive to run the expanding factory and sales. All right. To save money, your financial manager recommends the kibbutz to hire a contractor. And this is interesting because we've already made a decision to run the kitchen. We will charge members for lunch, says Reuben, and only open the dining hall for Shabbat dinners. Many members like free meals a day. Only people who break bread will stay united. One, close for lunch and charge fee for lunch and dinners. Maintain a full free kitchen for all 3 meals. Shut down the kitchen entirely. I think we already chose number 3. Maintain the kitchen.
Two. Everyone's saying 2.
Everyone's saying 2. It's a costly expense, but the dining hall remains a hub of social and political life on the kibbutz. All right, we got 2 last choices here as we approach the question mark, the end of utopia. Your founder's utopian vision seems out of date in a multicultural nation led by high-tech entrepreneurs, nationalist politicians, and religious settlers. What role does the kibbutz have in the 21st century? Your population is aging and your kibbutz sits on valuable country real estate. City dwellers want to move to the rural suburbs. A developer offers to build a new subdivision and divide the profits with the kibbutz. This is a good opportunity to bring in revenue, says Reuven. So 4 choices here. 1, reject the subdivision. 2, agree to the development only if you can interview buyers and take families who fit with your community. 3, embrace the project and market the subdivision throughout Israel. 4, agree to the project only if the buyers form a coexistence community of Jewish and Palestinian residents. Number 4, great. Ugh, your kibbutz voted against you. You embrace the project and market the subdivision throughout Israel. All right, I think this is the last one. The kibbutz faces an existential crisis. Nobody believes that everyone is equal. Nobody believes your small village can change the world. Even the word kibbutz has no real meaning anymore. Most other kibbutzes have embraced the change. Our children won't return if we don't offer them freedom, says Amos. No, shouts Hannah, nothing in Israel is more original or valuable than the kibbutz. People can leave if they don't like it. There's never been such an angry debate. What do you tell the General Assembly? 1, privatize the kibbutz. 2, turn it into a cooperative community. Or 3, reject any form.
2.
2 it is. It's a disappointment to give up the name kibbutz, but the cooperative Moshav movement is nearly as old and played a vital role in settling Israel. Cooperation was the core of your philosophy, and your home still holds to that ideal. And the final scene, your kibbutz persisted through many hardships to contemporary times. You create a large, well-off, well-regarded community of deeply divided and depressed members. Was the experiment a success? Only you can judge. So have a quick look at the final outcome there. And that, thank you for playing. And now I just want to open things up to questions. And I guess the first question is, did that feel like a success? We are deeply divided and depressed. So quick thoughts on the experience, and then I'd like it to open up for questions or thoughts on how kind of interactive media can be used to either kind of educate or engage kind of discussions.
Right, let's see.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Use it in a community school. And I've used this with my students as well, most of who know nothing about kibbutzim or intentional communities, and they'll kind of wrestle with the questions. Right.
Yeah, Jan, you have your hand up.
Yeah, actually, this game really did hit quite hard. This is basically what happened to my kibbutz, which I left 24 years ago. And the result has amazingly been that there are still very depressed people who think that the ideals had been given up, but it is a thriving community, twice as large as when I left it, with an amazing number of young families and amazing number of young children. And so I'm very divided in that we lost the ideals, but we actually are, and I don't live there any longer. I just go back and visit a lot. So that really did reflect, especially towards the end, exactly what happened to us. So that was a very powerful game. I do have one question though. Was there some kind of preloading when you said the kibbutz voted against you? Is
Yeah,
that
now that is something that I would probably kind of change. So when your solidarity falls below 50, there's a random chance that the kibbutz will overturn your vote. And the idea behind that is that you don't actually control. You're living in a kind of direct democracy, and you have that experience of frustration of knowing what might be the good decision, and having the people around you make a different decision. From a game experience, that's a little frustrating. So I'd like to have the option of turning that off, especially when you actually play it, which I don't think I ever have in a large group like this, where you are already kind of making a collective decision. So it was kind of a game mechanic decision within the game to try and emulate that experience of not always being in control, but from a player experience that can be very frustrating, I imagine. And yes, I agree that it works best. And I've done this in smaller groups where the students are in groups of 3 or 4, and they just play completely separately. So they all have different experiences, but they're able to have that kind of discussion. And I think it works best when you have that ability to discuss and really kind of wrestle with what is the right question, what are we kind of trying to do. So this was a much more kind of compressed version of that.
one more very short question? Have you played this with in a kibbutz community?
I have not. I've not had a chance to kind of go back to Israel, so I would be kind of interested in doing that and getting some feedback around that. I've done it at the Utopian Studies community and or conference and other places, but not in a kibbutz community. I worry that it feels too simplified, but maybe it doesn't. Dan.
Iris is asking if it is online, and I think that's the link to it, kibbutzgame.com. And we've got a comment from Dan about Jim Decove and his community pastimes games. And Dan's got his hand up, so maybe he wants to explain his question. Go for it,
I
Dan.
would love to. Great. Yes,
Yeah, I actually
Dan.
didn't want to say more about Jim Decove on he's got a very large line of cooperative games. But I wanted to ask if you it felt like you had set up some guardrails that made it very unlikely for us to drive our kibbutz into the ground. But it may also be that as communal studies scholars, we are very thoughtful about our choices and did better than others might. Which is the truth?
I think the second is actually the truth. I actually think it's perhaps too hard. Like I designed it but I've forgotten exactly what things affect what things. And I was doing a test run before this session just to see how long it would take. And in one case, I had kind of driven the kibbutz into the ground within 10 minutes, well before even the founding of Israel. So it is quite possible. I would say at least half of the participants don't make it to the stage that you made it to. That in fact, yours was on the upper end of highly successful playthroughs. I think because you were all able to kind of quickly make those kind of decisions of what might be better for the community. So yeah. So there aren't necessarily guardrails. If any one of those variables falls below 0, it's kind of you've reached a fail state. The kibbutz dissolves, people leave, you've lost the solidarity, it goes bankrupt as well. So you have to make decisions that balance all of those.
Okay, Taz, can you make a comment here? Unmute.
Yeah, please. Thank you very much for the game. I really liked it.
Thank you.
Following from what Jan said, so we are in Yad Benkin who speak the language of the flour and the bread. And we say that in terms of the language of bread, the kibbutzes is great success. Because today the kibbutz are more prosperous than before. And in the language of the flower, we are less leaders in terms of values and perceptions. In recent times, since October, we see again that the community structure is very helpful in times of crisis.
Yeah, thank you so much. And one, I should have acknowledged that Jan Tabank and all the staff there were super, super helpful to me in the research for my book. That was the first place I went to in my original visit, and kind of often went back. And that completely kind of, yeah, your statement completely aligns with what I learned during my research. And I think since the time that I wrote the book, and even since the time I designed the game, there has been this kind of rise in the population within the kibbutzim as well. There had been like a decline, but this, as Jan was saying, with these opening it up to new younger families, so many of the kibbutzim I've talked to recently have mentioned, yeah, there's this resurgence, but they admit that ideological spirit isn't what it was originally. And as I mentioned in the book, that we didn't get that choice. You had the choice of letting, in some playthroughs, of letting your younger people found an urban kibbutzim, and where there is, I think, some of that same spirit as well. That is one of the choices that you reach. But yeah, that's why I tried to kind of set it up to see how difficult it is to hold on to that original ideological spirit while still kind of sustaining a community with all the different kind of points of view and demands. And I still find the kibbutz kind of a remarkable achievement in that way.
We've got a 5-minute warning.
Right.
Ines, you got a question?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. Thank you. So, yeah, I just wonder, I mean, I've put into the chat also our previous research project where we researched critical turning points in eco-villages and communities. So, and I wondered, because this game is so great for yeah, educating students and so on, and to teach them a bit about the community issues. And I wonder if you know, or if this is going to be happen, that a game is made with, yeah, more general topics on community life. And this could go into, yeah, to the universities or even schools or so, to bring these issues about communal living a bit closer to the pupils.
Do you think it would be useful?
Oh yes, of course.
Yeah. No, I would love to. I would love to take that on as a new project. One of my current kind of research areas or projects I'm working on is around kind of climate change and how climate disasters affect communities. So kind of and I do want to work with people in interactive media to think about how, again, we reach kind of a younger audience who've grown up with these kind of games and these forms of interactive media to kind of get them to explore that. So yeah, I think certainly around
and also that
villages.
they create their own virtual community and build it up like today in this game that you showed about the kibbutz. And this would be, I think, really a nice thing. And have a look at our database, because there are hundreds. Yeah, we have 400 critical turning points described there. So that is really, yeah, it was a 4 years research project, 5 million euros for 35 researchers. Wow. Really, really big thing. And yeah, it can be analyzed according to different topics like climate change and so on. So you can, yeah, maybe get some ideas also to develop a game. And yeah.
Fantastic. I've clicked it and I've saved it. And I think that's really valuable. There are all sorts of games around climate change, but I don't know one around community and climate change. And I think that in some ways makes it more interesting, because it is more immersive and you feel kind of the stakes of it even more. It feels less abstract. So that's very valuable. I'm going to kind of bring it to my kind of team and have a look, because I think that's the kind of data that really makes a game work better as well, if it's based on that kind of level of research that you've done. So thank you so much for sharing.
Indeed. There's a lot about all these trust community issues is in there. Yeah. So
One more
let me
question.
know. I hope I will get. Do you have a newsletter or something? I will try to keep up with your news.
Yeah,
Fantastic. Thank you.
Time for one more question from Menachem, from Manolo. You have to unmute yourself.
Yeah. All of us know that it's very, very difficult to change values in people, not children. But in Israel, Zev Degani, a known teacher, manager of director of schools, and look at your team in Tel Hai, and so he developed play as your different as a monopoly. When each he and his wife, Claire Chaya, they engage the people in a play, some monopoly game, when each one receives a personality casually from Arab or Orthodox or kibbutznik or other, and in the game, you receive missions or problems, and you must act in this personality. This is the first level. The second level is that the people discuss about why they act in this form or other. The third slab, the level is that you transform each one his proper action with his opinions or values in the life, in the real life. This is three levels of. Normally, the game is possible to say where he works in 3 days, different days, 1, 2, 3, and these discussions is very useful and impact the people. They
No, I have to ask you to stop because we're running out of time.
Okay.
But thanks for mentioning that.
Yeah,
And
thank you. That sounds fascinating, the role-playing game. I'll reach out to you and find out more.
yeah, David, would you like to wind this up?
Well, I just want to say a huge thank you to everybody who kind of participated and who had that kind of openness of willing to kind of go in and play. This kind of came off kind of even better than I expected because of your kind of openness to kind of work together in that kind of true experience of community. So you inspired me to maybe kind of think about how this can be applied in other areas as well. And please reach out to me by email if you have any kind of tips or suggestions or want to learn more. And thank you again for organizing and everybody for kind of your openness.
Okay, thank you, David. Okay, everybody, we have a break and then we go to the next session in about 12 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks.